If you're curious about low self-esteem and how to transform it into self-worth, this video is for you. If you've been to my channel before, welcome back. If you are new to my channel, my name is Ross and I'm an intuitive counselor. In today's video, I want to talk about low self-esteem and how to transform that low self-esteem into self-worth. And this video actually connects really well with a video that I posted last week about core beliefs. And so I want to start by just kind of identifying what is low self-esteem. And low self-esteem or self-esteem is how we view ourselves, how we think about ourselves, how we speak about ourselves. And when we have low self-esteem, it's usually a byproduct of either our core beliefs or the voice of our inner critic, or a combination of both. And this low self-esteem impacts how we show up in the world. It impacts our way of being in the world. It impacts our interactions with others. It impacts how we step towards relationship or keep ourselves distanced from relationship. And it creates an ongoing story of how people view us or think about us. And so again, as always, we need to take a step back and say, where does this come from? How do we end up with low self-esteem? Because low self-esteem is just a symptom of something else. It's a symptom of something that's happened. And for most of us, it is rooted in experiences we had in our childhood. And we may have been told by parents that we weren't this or we weren't that. And this is where it relates to these core beliefs. And the thing is that when we hear something often enough, it becomes our reality. And I think the inner critic and how that plays in is it's just a continuation of the voices around us. And I don't want to just single out our family experiences. This happens like in school. I think it's probably the place where we get challenged the most is terms of like interacting with our peers. Children can be pretty cruel to each other, and that can really contribute to that inner self-talk. So when you think of self-esteem, it's highly correlated with the voice of your inner critic. So what happens is, as the voice of your inner critic gets louder, your self-esteem goes down. And as the voice of your internal reality becomes more positive, your self-esteem goes up and your self-worth becomes more potent. And this is essentially the key to figuring out our low self-esteem. We first need to understand why. What happened? What was my experiences that contributed to this inner dialogue, this inner voice? Where did I get this information from? What was the origin of this information? Who told me that I wasn't smart enough? Who told me that I wasn't good enough? And or did I make that story up based on the experiences that I was having, which can often happen as well. We can kind of misinterpret our situation or expand on something and make it even seem worse than it was. And the opposite, the way that we work with our self-esteem and turn it into self-worth, is to bring awareness to that inner critic, to bring awareness to that voice, and to challenge that voice when we notice it. And unfortunately, this is like many other things in this personal growth field. It's like it takes time. There's no quick fixes. It's not like we can turn this around quickly. And what we need to do is through awareness, begin to notice how we're talking to ourselves. Notice how people around us are talking to us. Sometimes we allow that kind of behavior outside of ourselves because it on some level feels comfortable. It feels normal. When we bring awareness to both our inner dialogue and the people around us, we can start to then change it. And that is the gradual process. And it might be just allowing yourself to stop that thinking, giving yourself permission to press pause, take some self-compassion. And, often when it comes to the people around us, we might need to set a boundary and be like, I'm not okay with you talking to me like that anymore. I'm not okay with being treated that way. And if it continues, I'm not sure if I can continue in this relationship the way it is. That can be a really hard thing to do, to set that boundary. But eventually you will get there. And eventually you won't tolerate some of the things that are happening outside of you. And interestingly, there's also a flip to this. There's also cases where We wouldn't tolerate that coming from outside, and yet we're treating ourselves like that on the inside. Whatever way that you can to bring awareness to this dialogue that's happening that is diminishing your self-esteem is going to be really helpful. Once you've brought awareness to that and you've started to turn the dial down on the voice of your inner critic, you can start to bring in affirmation. You can start to bring in that compassionate, kind voice and start to talk to yourself in a way that is the opposite of your inner critic, that is the voice of self-love, the voice of lifting yourself up instead of knocking yourself down. And eventually that will become more comfortable. Notice the things that you do well, compliment yourself, let yourself know that you care. And again, like that might feel awkward, but eventually it will become normal. And what will happen is that voice of the inner critic will eventually be displaced, or at the very least, the volume will be turned down drastically. And when we can be kind to ourselves, it also will be reflected in our environment and in the people that we surround ourselves with. So, as I said before, I wish this was a quick fix. Unfortunately, like many things, it is not a quick fix. It's something that's going to take time, awareness, and action. And eventually, you'll start to see the results of the efforts that you put into it. So, I'm going to go ahead and leave it there. And hopefully that's given you something to think about, something to ponder in regards to your self-esteem. And if you like this video, please consider hitting the like button. If you know someone who might benefit from this video, please consider sharing it with them. If you're interested in the work that I do as an intuitive counselor, you can find a link to my website in the description of this video. And I look forward to connecting with you again next time. Thank you for joining, and I wish you unconditional love. Bye for now.